Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Nico Stein, Senior VP of IT and Operations at Signal Financial Federal Credit Union. Nico, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. Hackers are getting smarter. Is your security keeping up? CyberLink sells industry-leading AI-powered cybersecurity solutions that detect threats in real time, so you know about an attack before the damage is done, not after. Learn more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Nico, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Signal Financial Federal Credit Union and your role there as Senior VP of IT and Operations?
Yeah, absolutely, Matthew. So yes, I'm the SVP of IT and Operations at Signal Financial Credit Union. We're a small to medium-sized credit union based out of Maryland. We have several branches around the region, some in DC, some in Virginia. I've been in this position, well, I shouldn't say this position. I've been at the company for 12 years, a bit over 12 years, in various positions throughout IT. And now I oversee all of our IT operations, the financial core, from laptops to SaaS and cybersecurity. So it's an interesting job for sure.
Well, I think one of the things I really love about positions like that, where you're in this kind of small to medium-sized organization, you kind of have to wear a million hats. So I think this is a really interesting time to be in that position. And I think this is a fun topic because you're not alone. I think there are a lot of people out there, in the same boat. So I'd kind of like to dive into that a little bit and discuss kind of how do you keep up with things, especially as AI's, advancing, cyber threats are advancing at kind of the same rate thanks to AI. So being a small group and not having 1,000, people working for you in the IT and cybersecurity department, how do you manage that?
Yes, it's a good question. I tell people it's a blessing and a curse. So yes, if you do troubleshooting, right, I need to check something on the firewall because the server doesn't work. I just log into the firewall and check it there, right? I don't have to jump through hoops and get with security team, put in a ticket, wait a week, and just to figure out the port was blocked. The curse is where if I don't know how to fix it or my team doesn't know how to fix it, we cannot easily just ask the other department. We are the department. It's a great learning experience. We like to promote within the team. We just onboarded a new tier one. He has no IT experience, just home labor. But I'm a home labor myself, so I like people who have to drive for it. And he's being exposed to all kinds of different technology, right? He's on the virtual stack. Well, not quite yet. He's still new. And he doesn't have domain admin, but he's on his path to really be much wider exposed than at a bigger shop. To keep up with it, we have, especially credit unions, what's a differentiator between banks. We usually share a lot amongst ourselves. So there's roundtables in the Eastern Seaboard, and we don't guard the information. So I can reach out to another SVP, another credit union, like, hey, how do you do this? We're thinking about this. What's the experience? I think from my experience talking to people working in the banking industry, banks are more guarded, right? They're more seen as competitors. While credit unions, we all compete for the same market in one way or the other, it's a little bit different because we're also member owned, right? So each member of the credit union owns a share, and we're nonprofit, so we give back to the community, or we try to, absolutely. And the community aspect also plays a big role in my position. So I'm really active in IT community. I'm highly involved with Veeam. I'm the Veeam Vanguard. I'm an Object First Ace, among other Cisco champions. So it's a great exchange where you also get to benefit from people who work at the bigger shops, right? They might implement solutions that we just cannot do right now because we don't have the manpower, we don't have the financial firepower to buy a firewall that does 25 gigs throughput, right? We don't need it, but I'm not exposed to it. But you talk to them and maybe one day we will be there. So, but keeping up, to your point, right, with AI and security and cyber and ransomware, that has not gone away. It's just accelerated in the past couple of years. So about a year ago, 1.5 years ago, I had a meeting with the board, and this was the fun budget time, which we all love, right?
Favorite.
And it's a favorite. It's a favorite. And the board, of course, is not technical. They don't have to be. They just need to understand implications and consequences of what we do. And that's part of my role where I translate from the technical part to the non-technical part. So we at Signal, we shifted from the, I shall say, hope we will not get ransomware to, oh, we are so going to get ransomware. And when I told the board, they looked at me, it's like, well, what do you do? I mean, why do we pay you? Why don't you stop it? And I responded, I'm fully self-aware I cannot stop it. And plus, if I figured out a way to stop it, I would be sitting on an island drinking margaritas all day because I found the holy grail, right? So I explained to them, we want to work with the assumption we will get ransomware. The question is, how quick and can we come back from this? Because this is where especially small and medium-sized organizations struggle. You might have an incident that you will not recover from. And then all your business continuity plans are out the window. We're also highly regulated, so we have to inform the government if we have a breach. And if our members cannot access their funds in a certain time, there are hefty consequences. So one of the, having all said that to the board and the CFO, it doesn't mean we stop and we just open the firewall any, right? We're not going to do that. We still have our defense in depth. But one of the things we did, again, we are Veeam shop. We have a lot of our workloads on our data center. We have some in the cloud, but we mostly are data centric in our data centers. So we onboarded immutable storage. In this case, it's object first, which works great for us. It is, and I'm not, yes, I'm object first ace, so clearly I like the solution. And when I'm not selling the solution, it works for a lot of small, medium-sized businesses, right? It's a set and forget. I'm pretty certain that I can recover. They cannot delete the backups. So we have a plan there. RTOs and RPOs are being met. And the whole spiel to the board was obviously I needed the money to purchase this solution. The way I described it, look, the alternative is here on the Washington Post. And I know marketing says there is no bad publicity. I disagree. There is really bad publicity. You do not want to be up on the website that Signal members cannot access their fund. The ATMs are down. They cannot pay their mortgage.
Yeah.
So we have that solution for 1.5 years now. Knock on wood, we haven't had a ransom case yet. Again, I'm sure it's coming. And probably by me talking to you, Matthew, it's minutes away. But so far that has been a good solution. And I'm talking to others, creating a small, medium-sized business. I recommend it. There's other solutions out there, but then you need sometimes more manpower, right? I mean, Veeam has a great hardened repository. It's amazing. That is really cost efficient, but you also need a little bit Linux skills sometimes, right? And we always trade the convenient for time and money.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really great idea. Veeam is such a solid product. I mean, great company. They've got a lot of great products. And I think that it always shocks me when we hear about these ransomware cases and people can't recover their data. I'm like, are you serious? In this day and age, at this point, I think it's inexcusable to not have, solid backups that were, immutable and unreachable. That for me, I think that is, that is kind of a fireable offense in my opinion. As you said, you can't stop everything because we know that they're going to be creative. They're going to come up with new ways in. It's best to plan for it's going to happen. I hope it doesn't. Right. We're going to do everything we can to stop it and prevent it. And ultimately, I'm an optimist. I think the good guys will win this battle in the end. But right now, the bad guys are really well funded and they're really well armed with AI. And so I think we have to be really well prepared. And that starts with that backup. And to not have that, I don't understand that. And yet we see it time and time again where, oh, they didn't have it. We can't recover this. We have to pay the ransom. What are you talking about? Like that's crazy. Now, I get the getting hit by ransomware. Great. And I think that this actually kind of segues into a really fun topic that I enjoy a lot. And I think this is, since the bad guys are using AI, I think that this is something that we have to start using. It has to be on the security side. It's kind of a fighting fire with fire. If we don't, we're basically bringing a knife to a gunfight. We already see, I'm really excited about Mythos. I think that's a great kind of advancement. We're seeing that that AI being used by the good guys to thwart the bad guys before they can get to us. I think that gives us kind of a view of things to come, right? And that we will have a future where the bad guys are using AI, but the good guys are using it first and hopefully better. But it raises the question. I know everybody's kind of getting, there's a lot of people are getting kind of AI fatigued, AI everything, and it's like, ugh. But I'm kind of curious, right? In the small and medium business, and especially the financial institution, like it's one thing to be a kind of a money-making machine, a small organization that's got the funds and it's easy. But when you're a credit union, you're not generating the kind of revenue that other companies might be. So how do you is that a game that you can't play in, or do you just have to get more creative when it comes to security? Like how do you balance that?
Yeah, that's a great question. The only thing I want to say about the backups, all I want to point out, I understand when they don't have backups, right? But backups is the first target of every ransomware attack right now. So, and I always joke around like I should play for the red team. They have cookies, they need to find one thing you didn't think about. You have to think about everything. So a little shout out for the people who thought they had it all in place and then they missed one thing and the backup repositories were deleted. Currently,
Very fair point. Yes,
yeah,
that's
totally understand
much
that.
more considerate than
Yeah.
my zero excuse perspective. So yeah,
No,
good
but
point.
so in terms of AI, so for smaller, I mean, we have AI. We like most organizations, we have 365 jobs, so we usually utilize Copilot. Um, we don't have the power to have our own large language model, right? That's just not feasible. So the small organizations, they really depend a lot on the vendors, what they can do for the products we use. So especially in the financial market, um, we have a lot of attacks on our members, and AI is really scary. So we have some members that are a bit elder, and we're seeing more and more voice phishing attacks, right? And they are extremely hard to detect for that member because they are, like you said, this is a really well-run organization. It's highly profitable. They have the funds, they have the skill set, they attract, unfortunately, good talent. So they know the social engineering factors, right? To create an urgency, to create panic when someone calls and pretends it's your grandson. And they sound like your grandson. This is really hard. So we're starting to reach out to the community and giving some tips. How can you put some countermeasures in place to detect if this is really your grandson? But we see this a lot. It's saying when members call in our call center, right? And it's like, hey, I'm Matthew. I want to wire $50,000. So we have some systems now, they do voice printing, right? And see if you sound like Matthew, but also if you lie, it's almost like a polygraph test, right? If you lie, the system can kind of detect, well, there's some stress factors. And it's not 100%, but it's all kind of not indicators of compromise in that way, but it's indicators of phishing, right? If Matthew wants to withdraw $50,000, he might be excited, but this guy sounds really excited. He might be lying. And for this solution, we depend on the vendors, and their vendors really starting to put good solutions out there. But then also talking about AI and AI fatigue, and I'm a bit fatigued about it. Because if you remember a few years ago, it was blockchain, right?
Yep.
And then I think now the only thing that's missing in marketing slides is AI and blockchain. I haven't seen that yet. I'm sure it's coming. Um, so a lot of presentations I sit through or vendor proposals like, oh, we have AI. It's like, do you really? Or is it an if-then clause in Visual Studio? Um, it also needs to, and I had this discussions internally. Right now, if you don't have AI, you don't have a product, right?
Yeah.
But we need to use AI to solve a problem. Right now, we're like, here's AI, find what it can do. And in my opinion, that's the wrong approach, right? We need to look at a problem. Can AI solve it? Great. It might or might not. But in my opinion, a lot of this right now totally reverse, right? We have AI. Some companies like, hey, I bought 1 million tokens. You all need to use them, and you're like, for what? We use it heavily for meeting transcripts and summarization, like everyone else. It has efficiency. It's great. Um, it helps writing better emails sometimes, right, or proofread it. So there's all of this. Definitely, like a lot of other financial institutions, we're looking in efficiencies in terms of faster decisions for underwriting, right?
Yeah.
Like it can compare all those facts and make a suggestion. Like again, I'm just going to use you, Matthew, because you're my member right now.
I'm here.
Yep. Can Matthew get this loan, right? Can he get this car loan? The final say is always a human. It has to be, and it should be, in my opinion, because the AI is, as we all know, very wrong and really confident wrong sometimes. And we cannot give out the last bit of control there. There's also implications of accountability, right? So last year there were some banks that used AI as a chatbot, and a customer talked to them and they negotiated a great mortgage rate, and then the bank said, well, you didn't talk to a human, and the court sided with the client because, well, they don't know. That's
Right.
really your problem. So they got amazing deal for a mortgage.
Yep.
Yeah, and so we really need to be aware of this and not completely take the hands off it and
Yeah.
just see what it does.
Wait, it's funny because I completely agree, and I think if you look at kind of the self-driving cars where we're at right
Hmm.
now, and sure, it's using AI, and we wouldn't be, where we are today with self-driving cars if it weren't for AI. But I think if you've ever kind of gone into one of if you've got like a Tesla with full self-driving, or if you've gone into any of the self-driving cabs, it's really kind of fascinating because I think in you rewind a few years ago and you can just see the evolution. It was like a drunk toddler driving. It was dangerous. It was like, this is not safe, right? And then it became like a teenager who was learning to drive. And
Hmm.
now it's a teenager who just got their license. They're doing a great job, but I still don't trust them. And so it's kind of fun to see this evolution in like the physical world, right? It gives this physical representation of what AI can do. And it's the kind of the same deal. You can't just trust it because it lulls you into this false sense of security. Like, oh, it's great. It answered that question right and that question right, and it
Hmm.
knows all this stuff, and it seems to be. And every day it gets smarter, and you're like, wait, this is no longer just autocomplete. This thing really, like, this was well thought out. This response, and it's well researched, and this one was solid. And then other times it's like, well, that's completely off base, and that was
Yeah.
you referencing stuff that doesn't even exist, and that's the car, like, just whoops, we ran off the road and we hit something. Like, okay, that happens, but to your point, the humans got to be in that decision making, and is ultimately always responsible. But it becomes really challenging because you get so accustomed to it being right a lot, and then you're not really checking on it when, and so the same with the self-driving car. You kind of get lulled into it, and you have to constantly be paying attention and thinking of it like it's a kid, driving, where you can't really rely on it. And I think that's a challenge for people, because if you go back to like what Microsoft did when they rolled out Copilot, they thought that they were going to have massive implementation. And after 90 days, they checked, and they had about 15% of the people were still using Copilot, and 85% had stopped. And they thought it'd be the opposite. What they found was it was the people who treated Copilot like it was an intern or a new employee. Those, now they're thinking of it like, hey, you don't really know anything, let me teach you. So they're using leadership and communication skills, but thinking of it, kind of in a human kind of way of, you don't know anything, I'm going to guide you through this, and eventually you'll be really good. And that's what happens. And I think we have to do that today with AI. We have to keep remembering that this isn't the future AI where it's going to be better than us at everything. Ultimately, it'll be silly to drive a car with as a human, because AI is going to be so much better. I'll give you one example. The other day we were driving, and this car veered into our lane, and faster than I could have possibly done it. It looked like we had done this in unison, like the cars
Hmm.
were talking. The car moved at the exact. I mean, there wasn't milliseconds of difference. I was blown away. Now I can't rely on that all the time,
Right.
but he did such an incredible job. Like, there's no way I could have done that. Like, humans take longer to react, to process that. And it did it just in an imperceivable difference in time. It was spectacular. I was floored. I was like, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. That was wild, right? But it's hard to stay focused on that. And then you get like the AI fatigue, right? Now you're talking about one, everybody's talking about it. It's in all these products. People are just slapping it onto products and being like, we're AI. Okay. And now you've got ton of crap, right? You've got AI stuff that's out on the content that's crap, AI products
Hmm.
that are crap. And so I think the real challenge, and I'm going to pose this to you, finally getting to a question. I think the real question is, how do you combat that? And as a small organization, you don't have unlimited resources to be examining 100 different products a week. You do need to filter through and kind of stay on the edge of what's going on, at least understanding it and kind of seeing it. So how do you balance that? Because ultimately, realistically, at one point in the future, AI is going to have to be a part of the security in every organization. So how do you go about fighting that AI fatigue and still, kind of staying on top of things?
That's a great question. And just the way I am, I'm not always running for the show. I'm a very skeptical person. So that actually helps. So I have some C-suite and all this, and there's like, this is the greatest thing, right? It's like, no, this is not. This is no. They're just that's a fancy PowerPoint. But there's definitely use cases, right? I mean, we have been using AI before it made the ABC News, right? And our
That's right.
spam boxes and all this it's been always there. It's not necessarily that impressive, but we've been using it from vendors. Um, where I think the real challenge now comes in, and we talked a little bit before we went live, is the agentic AI, right? So I'm totally agree. Like AI is now in the teenager years, right? It's does some things right. It's still sometimes the drunk driver, and it's like, what are you thinking? But it's not a toddler anymore. It's already there, and I think now we're shifting to agentic AI with MCP servers everywhere, and that is my personal nightmare from a security perspective, right? Because there's no way that I can control. I mean, unless, yes, I can block it, but it's really hard to utilize it in a secure way
Yeah.
that the data does not go all everywhere. Um, and I think we almost shifting. So to answer your question, I don't really have a good answer other than be really critical and really see what does this solve for us? What problem do we have? Does it solve it, or is it just filling a sales quota from a sales guy, right?
Yeah.
Or is someone falling like, well, we have to do AI. Why? Well, everyone is doing it. Okay. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but we need to solve problems. And we need to have a return on investment on it, right? Again, I can throw a million tokens at it and people create cat memes. I
Yeah.
don't get return on investment there. Fun, but really doesn't get us any further.
Yeah.
I think with agentic AI, and I like in the next 2, 3 years, I think it will really take off. We've seen OpenClaw now. That is definitely blocked in our network because it's a security nightmare.
Yes.
But giving this kind of control, and I mentioned I was at a conference and there was discussion about from a speaker, it really goes away from a technical question completely. It's a human question. It's a philosophical question. And let's assume, and we talked about, I'm just gonna, we all decision fatigue, right? We brought up that example prior. We make 1,000 decisions per day, from the cereal bowl to what do I wear. And the human brain really is not built to choose between 500 different cereal boxes. Give me two, three. I'll pick this one. So with agentic AI, you can completely give that away, right? You just like tell your plot, like, I need this, order me some cereal. I don't care. It will make the decision for you. It will all do all of this. And then the question is, so we gain all that time, right? I mean, the idea is we have AI do the mundane stuff we don't want to do,
Hmm.
and we just do the creative stuff, right? Well, personally, I don't think that's how humans work. We're inherently lazy beings, most of us. I mean, generalizing, obviously, right there. But if you look at the mass amount of people, with the time you gain from genetic AI, the hope is he's going to start being a second Da Vinci, the second Mona Lisa, or you start doing the hobbies you always want to do. You might, but most likely, 90%, you're going to watch Netflix or you're going to doom scroll. You're not going to use that time. And um, I've referenced the movie Idiocracy that I highly recommend people watching it because it's really up to date again. It's an older movie, but
Yep.
we don't want to end up putting coke on our crops because AI told us that's how it grows, and then we starve.
Yeah.
So
Rondo.
yep, yeah,
It's what
ex-
plants crave.
yeah,
That's
that's what's great. There you go. See, I need to watch it again. I forgot that. Um, but the principle is the same. So I think humans really need to decide how far do we want to take this, and it's really hard because you can also, okay, well, if we don't do it, some other society, some other country will, right? But
Yeah.
we as humans need to, how far do we want, should we utilize it? Absolutely. But do we really want to be the co-drivers or the passenger of our own life? And
Yeah.
that's philosophy. This has nothing to do with IT or Sigma Financial, right? It's like us as a society.
Yeah.
And one question that was posed and we discussed at that conference, like, has AI made our world better? And it's a personal question, right? There's definitely some advancements in medicine and all that, but overall, and maybe we should have another podcast in 5 years, see where we stand with agentic AI.
Do
And
it.
is the world really a better place? Has I made life for humans better, or have we all been replaced and we just sit in the street because we're all out of a job, or AI is completely taking over? I don't know.
I don't either. But I think the interesting thing is, so if you look back to ancient Roman times, they had a similar situation. And I'm not saying it's going to be exactly this way, but they had a similar situation in Rome. They had so many slaves that people didn't have to work anymore, right? They had slaves doing it.
Mhm.
And now I think the modern day, equivalent is obviously AI. So in the future, when we have AI doing all this stuff for us, what will it be like? And in Rome, what was really fascinating was socially they had this, and I forget what the word is for it, but they had this expression for basically what do you do with your free time? And it was considered, kind of uncouth. And if you weren't like learning, if you weren't
Mhm.
improving, yourself,
Mhm.
in some way, whether it was, learning history, performing the arts, doing these things for self-improvement. And I think it's really interesting because I think we're going to go into something very similar where right now I think we will see as AI takes jobs, right? As it currently stands, your job consumes a large portion of your life, right?
Yep.
Unless you're one of the lucky few who were born, into incredible wealth where you don't ever have to work. And those people, they seem to be doing okay because they have all this wealth, right? It's a
Yeah.
tough job, but but what they end up doing though is a lot of travel, a lot of learning, and it is considered at the same time kind of uncouth to just sit around and do nothing, right? You have to be kind of growing and doing something, even though they have lots of money to spend on whatever they want. Sitting around and just playing video games or what, doom scrolling isn't, doesn't allow them to socialize with people of their class, if you will, others in their same position in any sort of reasonable way, right? So for them, it's this kind of traveling to certain places and doing certain things that show that they're in that group. Fine. So I think for most people though, going from where if you go to like middle America, there's a lot of people, it's entirely different than what you see in the cities, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know how kind of the average person will transition from, this kind of having to work to they don't have to work now because there's all these resources available to them. Even if everybody's got like their personal robot and, resources are just so abundant that nobody has to work and there's some sort of credit system or whatever. And we see now even like the poor in our country, most of the poor live really well compared to the poor of 100 years ago.
Mhm.
In many ways they live like royalty from 100 years ago, and that's in many cases even better. They've got air conditioning, they push a button and food arrives, they've got iPhones, they've got access to all the information in the world. So will we see a future where people who currently don't have to work and in the future really won't have to work to maintain a very comfortable lifestyle, what will motivate them? And I think back to your point of people are kind of lazy. So I don't know, did you ever see that movie Wall-E?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Will they be like that on their floating recliners, just all fat as hell, just sucking
Yep.
down food?
It is a chance. I mean, I think I'm a bit more pessimistic. I hope I'm wrong. But I think one point you kind of touched on this, and we've talked about this too. A- yes, AI will take jobs away, but I think what humans really have a hard time is the identity loss because your job is your career, and I'm just guilty
Yeah.
as charged, right? If not necessarily the employer, but what you do, right? I'm in IT. I've been in IT all my life. If you take that away, then you have a loss of identity, and that is really hard for humans. And I see this now. I have a son, and he's 13, right? And I feel a bit. I'm worried about them because you most likely depend. I mean, I don't like to generalize it, but it's going to be hard that you're going to have a career, right? Especially
Yeah.
with you might be an insurance broker for 5 years, and then you might be, I don't know, a landscape, but then there's no identity. And for humans, I think in general, we need to have an identity. Now, in the Western world, it's really dictated by your job, but it will be hard to shift from like, I'm not my career, I'm not my job, I'm not the IT guy, I am Nico, and I read and I paint.
Yeah.
And that will be, hopefully, younger generation will be able to adapt. At my age, that will be almost impossible. But I have hope that I think that's really where AI is going to come in and take the identity of what we think we are right now in the next couple of years.
I think that's a really fascinating point because you look at the younger generations now, coming into the workforce, they have a much stronger sense of my identity is not my job,
Hmm.
right? And I think they've become slightly, disillusioned in the American
Oh
dream
yeah,
because houses are so expensive, cost of living so
yep,
expensive. So for them, it's like this is all crap. This is a
yeah.
load of crap that you're trying to sell me. I'm going to work because I need some money to do the things that I want to do, but I don't think they're tying their identity to their jobs like we did. For
Hmm.
us, it was and is an important part of what we do and kind of like you said, our identity. It's tied in pretty heavily, but they've resisted that, and I think it will help prepare them. I think the transition for them is going to be really easy because they're already like this working stuff is for the birds, and we're like, what are you talking about? It gives you purpose and drive and motivation and all these things. And they're like, "You're crazy," and
Yeah.
you've drank the Kool-Aid and now you're brain dead, right? And they might be right, but for us, it worked out well. I think for them, they don't see the same path
Hmm.
because financially the markets have shifted. You got private equity buying up all the houses, and now and inflation and healthcare costs and all these things make it really difficult for somebody who was told their whole life, do well in school, you go to a good school, graduate, and get a good job, and you'll be set. Well, that's not the case anymore.
Nope.
You can go and do all those things, and then you might not get a job, or you get a job and you can just barely pay the rent. So it's like, wait a sec, I did all the things I was supposed to do. You told me this is what's going to happen, and it didn't happen. So I think the rest of it is a load of crap too. So they might be onto something.
I
I
think
think that
so.
might really help them.
Hopefully. The funny thing is though, the younger generation, yes, I understand and I share that resentment about like there was all a bunch of crap. It all changes about a job when they want to start their own family because then then it's a bit easier to say if you're just your own free agent. I'm like, yeah, I'm just
Yep.
going to work a little bit to pay for my little going out rent. But then it's like now I have responsibilities. And that's what also, we always joke around. It's like, well, I work. Well, why do you work? I have a mortgage to pay. That's why I work, right?
So,
Not only, but that's definitely has. If I even tell my boss, like, look, if I win the lottery, I'm out. And yeah, so we'll see that younger generation, and I totally agree. It's super hard for them, right? You come out of college, you don't get a job, you have your student loans, you already starting off so badly. It's such a disadvantage. Like having your own house is untainable. Like I think some statistics I read now, it's moving to 40. You have to be about 40 to buy your first house, which in America was always, in the mid-20s you start early, and it's unattainable. So it's definitely interesting times we're looking at. Slightly worried, a little bit optimistic.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think we're in this really fascinating kind of in between phase, right? And we don't know how long this in between phase is going to be. That in between, the where we are now and AI doing everything, and this new economy that will somehow, you know, exist. Who knows? And I think the challenge is we're not, as humans, we're not ready for it. Like we don't have the policies, the regulations, the government set up in a way that it will work. We've got these massive billionaires who are going to become even more, and it's really hard to fathom. And I'm obviously very pro people getting ahead, but what we see, it's going to be really weird as we have these, billionaires and then trillionaires. it's unimaginable that that level of power, kind of, in one person's hands. So it'll be really interesting to see how we regulate this, because that has to flow down to the common person if you're going to have a society where those people, you know, how are they a part of it,
Hmm.
right? If it's like, a handful of trillionaires who run all the AI and robotic companies, and they've made all this money, and they're generating all the wealth and producing all the stuff, and robots are doing everything. We're just not in a position where we understand it, and we can regulate it, and we can make this work globally, for humanity. So I think this is really, that's going to be crazy. I'm not sure how we get there. I don't, obviously nobody is. We don't have that worked out yet. It's like going from here to Star Trek. How do we get,
Yeah.
like, what's that look like? And nobody's ever spelled it out like, oh, here's how that went. And I don't think we know. But I think in the interim, in this time that we're in right now, this I think is actually a really fascinating time, because as we see the hackers doing their evil using AI, I think it becomes really, really interesting when you get going back to what you said earlier of, we've had AI for a long time, and machine learning has been, I think, wildly overlooked until now, where you see LLMs, they're great, and that's what everybody thinks of when they think of AI. But you can't bolt an LLM onto your email security gateway and be like, it's AI now.
Yeah.
No, you now have prompt injection problems. You now have all kinds of issues. But that's where I think machine learning has come so far in the last kind of 10, 15 years that we've really been working with it. And I think that's really kind of I think that's the interim hero right now when it comes to security, because you see products like Darktrace that does super cool stuff when it comes to understanding what the end user's doing, what they normally do. And when suddenly Nico's writing emails at two o'clock in the morning, it's like, hold up, Nico doesn't do that. And also, this doesn't sound like Nico. I'm gonna stop this,
Hmm.
right? When suddenly an app starts doing something that it doesn't normally do, it's like, that's not right. Right. I think those are the cool things that I get excited about, because it shows us that future, kind of like the self-driving cars, where you're like, oh, that's super cool. I can see where this takes us, because I do think we're going to live in an age for a while where you're going to have AI living on your machine, checking everything, and it's like, hold up, clearly somebody's just found some vulnerability in your Adobe Acrobat, and they're doing something weird. I'm gonna stop that. You're gonna have AI where it's listening on the phone call all right there, and it's like, you know what, this person is not Microsoft support. I think you should hang up now, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. I think that's gonna be really fun. And I think we see that, in some products. So anyway, I could go on and on about that stuff, but I think that's really exciting. And for me, I don't get that fatigue, because I think it's like we kind of have to, right? We have to stay up on these and look at those kind of those advancements in the technology and how we're doing that. Because if we stop, the bad guys win, right? Like they're going to always be on the edge using
Hmm.
AI and finding vulnerabilities. And we can't just be sitting targets, right? It's one thing to have our backups, it's one thing to be ready for when they get in. But we have to, as the good guys, we have to make it so hard that we cut off the money supply to them. Because right now they're making so much money, they're making
Yeah.
billions of dollars a year, and that's making the problem worse. And until we can get so good on our end that we cut off the money train, I think they're going to keep going. So that's the optimist in me, right? I am pro good guys. I think we win this fight, and I think that's the only way that we can. And I think it comes with, those using the right tool for the job, not just, hey, look at this, it's AI now. Is
Absolutely.
it? Is
Yep.
it really? So
So I agree with this, right? I like AI where it makes sense.
yeah,
But to your point, just I threw AI on the email gateway, and now we're awesome. It's like, no, you're not.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited about some AI solutions like that. This is awesome, and others, just filtering out the noise is really the hard part right now.
It really is, because there's just so much noise, right? There's so many new products and so much, kind of BS out there. So I think we're in that fascinating time where it's both fascinating and tiring, right? And there's only so much time in the day, and you can only, kind of explore so many products. And that's why I think, things like the Gartner Magic Quadrant, I think is a really great tool to kind of narrow that down, because now you've got professionals who are, yeah, is it perfect? No. But does it narrow those down to be like, look, these are industry leading, we should be looking at these tools. I think that's really helpful. So things like Veeam are on there, things like Darktrace, you get those products that maybe, instead of looking at 100, because who's got that kind of time? Nobody does. But you now looking at a handful and be like, okay, I can go through 4 or 5 products because we've got this problem we want to solve. So how do we do that? Not a pitch for Gartner or anything, but I think tools like that really help, right? I think it's like that kind of help us narrow those down. And as busy professionals who don't have a million people working for us to look at all the new products, how do you get just industry leading and tried and true? I think things like that really help. So, anyway, I go on and on about that stuff. 'Cause for me, that's fun stuff. Nico, this has been a blast. I've loved having you on. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you, and where they can find out more about Signal Financial?
Sure. So I have my own website. I blog every now and then. So just go to nicostein.com. There's also contact. You can find me on LinkedIn with the same name. Signal Financial, we have Signal. It's a longer URL, so signalfinancialfcu.org. Check us out. We have good rates. We try to take care of our members. So if you're in the DMV area around Maryland, Virginia, or DC, give us a look, and maybe I'll welcome you in one of our sessions where we talk about how to stay safe out there.
I love it. Well, hey, let me ask you a follow-up question on that. If somebody's in the DMV, are there any other requirements? Because, some federal credit unions, some credit unions, you have to meet certain requirements. For individuals and businesses, are there any requirements other than being in the DMV?
DMV will work. We'll get you.
Awesome.
We make it work for you.
There you have it. Perfect. Nico, well, thanks again for coming on, and until next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.